Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ishmael Interactive and the CX Pod. We are joined today by CEO Anna Monroe and Chief Design Officer Scott Kellum. Anna and Scott, today we're talking about the recent news from the State Department that they are mandating a change from Calibri font to Times New Roman. Uh, Initial reactions?
I'm going to let Scott react first.
I guess it's both inconsequential and extremely consequential at the same
Oh,
time.
a
Like
paradox. In
it's
government? Never.
yeah. Um Times New Roman works. A typeface is a utilitarian thing. It exists to communicate letters to people and therefore words to people so people can understand what they're reading. And that has not changed. People can still read the text. There are some details about like why fonts matter, why this design change matters, and ultimately it was not for why Microsoft made the change because it was Microsoft's change, not the federal government's change. Um, it was because Times New Roman was designed as a print typeface. Um,
Right.
it and it's old. Like it has this legacy of um, newspapers. It was from like metal type. And so metal type then gets translated to phototype. And there's all these like typographic technologies. And it inherits some of the design inconsistencies from those. And that's why Calibri, which is digital first, it was really designed to be read on screens. So in terms of screen legibility, we are losing something by going to Times. In terms of print legibility, like when you're printing out documents and Marco Rubio or whoever is reading these documents, there is a case to be made that um, Times New Roman can be easier to read for some people. So, it's, uh, but on screens, we are losing something. Yeah.
Let's roll back a little because I don't want to get too term specific for the non-specialist crowd out there. We know typography and fonts matter. Everybody knows they matter. But this is the kind of news that ordinarily people would brush aside and dismiss and okay, what's the next thing? Because they don't know how and in all the various ways they matter. So let's talk broadly. It affects reading speed, accessibility. Why do people pay other people a ton of money to design a font? Why does it matter?
People pay a ton of money, and it is a ton of money to buy, license, commission a custom font. Um, for a variety of reasons. And when I think of the value that fonts have, I think of it in two buckets. One is in utility. Um, does it satisfy specific design needs? So, does it have a global character set that supports multiple languages? Something that would be important for the State Department.
So
The utility of it, and then there's the value, additional value in the um, aesthetics of it. What is it communicating emotionally to somebody? And that, like, a lot of people talk about
Um,
the voice that fonts give to
okay,
people.
so Anna, Scott mentions the readability, how fast you can read through it. You're our CEO. You're the boss of getting product out the door. You're all about productivity. I know you've looked into this because you're not only our CEO, you've worked in design for years and years and years.
yeah.
This is your life.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about the productivity impacts involved here?
Oh my gosh, yes. And I did my homework in preparation for this podcast, and I have come armed with some numbers, which is very exciting for everyone, I'm sure. Changing those defaults represents operational overhead that is a tiny bit of friction so many times per day for every employee of an agency that largely trades in words. That is the stock and trade of the State Department. It's production of documents, it's communication, it's words, it's voice, like Scott was saying. It's incredibly important. Just to give you an example, I did, like I said, dig up some numbers here. So there was a 2019 study from that was published in PLOS One, which is a scientific journal, and they found that 23.8 million hours were spent reformatting manuscripts worldwide annually. And when you kind of like spread that over full research teams, they focused on research teams, that's $1.1 billion annually spent on reformatting. This is not a problem you want to give to your employees, whatever your reasoning. It just costs a lot.
Yeah.
US papers alone cost $202 million annually. And that's substantial, right? And so from a managerial standpoint, this just isn't a change that's worthwhile. It doesn't pay the bills. And that's my first response to this. I
Okay,
would
this seems like a great place to interrupt and mention Ishmael Interactive's HCD Discovery Guide. The Discovery Guide outlines the human centered design research process. We call it Discovery. And this process, which you can replicate over and over again in your organization, is the only way that you can know whether the changes that you're thinking about or the changes that you have made are having the desired impacts on your internal and external customers. And it doesn't matter how big your organization is. We developed and tested this discovery guide with organizations from 340,000 people all the way down to small teams of 5 or 6. This is in a book form, so you can just buy the book and get this knowledge over and over again and reference it as you need. That's the HCD Discovery Guide. Get it wherever you buy books, whether that's Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or ishmaelinteractive.com. And here's a bonus. If you buy the HCD Discovery Guide from ishmaelinteractive.com, let us know and we will send you the ebook version for free. That means that you'll be able to reference this process as fluidly on your tablet or phone as you do in the real book. So let us know if you like the HCD Discovery Guide. And now let's get back to the pod.
So we've talked a little bit about the Microsoft default and the advantages and disadvantage of each font, but what this does make me wonder is if Microsoft has this as a default, at some point Calibri becomes the predominant font. It's just what you find out there most of the time. As people trying to put content online, are you losing something by not being on trend or not being what other people are doing?
Um, yes and no. With Microsoft specifically, this change, they are trying to not chase trends. They are somewhat doing it. Like Aptos chases the trend of the geometric sans. Uh, Calibri chased the trend of like hyper legibility and humus sans of that the mid aughts. Um, and I mean Times New Roman was Times New Roman. I think that's
Yeah.
uh,
But when you're
that's been
Microsoft,
around
you're
for a while.
creating the trend. So is
You're
the US government losing something by not doing what Microsoft does?
they um they are a big organization and they have to make very conservative moves that are highly focused on specific goals, or else there would not be a reason to make that change. So there needs to be an inflection point, a threshold that they pass in order for Microsoft to make that change at such a scale. I think with Calibri, that change was extremely clear in that people are moving towards LCD screens. They are moving towards reading on screens. Uh, when you are working with a document, the vast majority of the time you spend reading that document is while you're editing it on a screen. Um, that needs to be ergonomic and comfortable for people. And Calibri was the way that they made that happen. Um, Times New Roman was not that. So I don't think that this is as much trend chasing. Uh, it, this, yeah, this change does not seem, none of the changes here that we're talking about, the State Department change or the Microsoft change, uh, are really driven by chasing trends. Um, I can, I think that it is chasing some kind of typographic voice. So yeah, I'm just kind of, yeah, I think this is about typographic voice, why they made this change. I don't think it's about chasing trends. I don't think this is about ergonomics and readability. Um, it's it is about implanting their voice onto these documents,
Gotcha. Anna,
which is
thought?
important that, yeah,
Oh, sorry.
sorry, that is important. That is a branding change. Voice is important.
Hmm.
And how and why you're using that voice is important. So, I'm without being dogmatic or specific about what this voice is, I just want to be clear. I think this is a voice change. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's definitely a voice change. I think that it projects sort of a hearkening back to a kind of like mythical time that is quite august. You know, nostalgia is a very powerful tool. I mean, when I see Times New Roman, I think about, submitting my history papers to an important institution. And that was the Times New Roman was the voice of seriousness, right? Like and I think that's what Secretary Rubio is really kind of trying to hit on. I still think it's a weird disconnect for an administration that is professedly focused on the future. But like, yeah, I think that they're doing a voice change. I agree with that.
It does remind me of, not to date myself, but when I was in typing class in elementary school,
Oh my
the
God, did you do
yeah,
Mavis Beacon? I did.
yes, yeah,
Yes, Mavis Beacon.
but one of the first things our teacher had us do was pick a font. And I chose Times New Roman, and she asked me, "So how'd you know to pick that?" And I told her it says Roman in it.
Oh.
It just carries that connotation, that voice of I'm gonna be formal, official. It
So
sort
I
of
chose
always had
Times New
that
Roman.
magic.
I chose Times New Roman because I thought that Times and New in proximity meant the New York Times. Like that's why I thought it was important. In my mind, the New York Times was like the most important publication. So if they're
Beautiful.
doing a voice change, I don't know in the mind of a Mavis Beacon 1990s student. I don't know who you're hearkening to.
So we've
It was
talked.
commissioned
Oh,
by the
yes.
Times,
Oh, it
originally
was?
commissioned by the
No
Times.
kidding.
Not the
Oh.
New York Times, but
Right.
Oh,
the
the London
Times,
Time, the Times
the
in
London
London.
Times. Yes.
Ooh.
So we've talked about what they're trying to do. We have our concerns about productivity and why it might not work. I think we all hope it does. We all benefit when government actually accomplishes things. But
Yes.
there's a lot to gain out of typography and fonts. And Scott, I'll let you go first on this because this is sort of your field and your specialty. Not sort of, it is. What is the cutting edge, the next thing that is going to create productivity or better experiences in this domain?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about, PDFs on the internet, things being read on the internet. And Calibri is good for screens. It's a great typeface for screens. Um, One of the things that is unique about screens is that you're not sure what the dimensions of that
True.
screen might
Yeah.
be. Um, so having the text respond to in the layout respond to different changes in width, having the sizing and the proportion, because typography and design is really driven by proportion. Um,
Makes sense.
those kinds of things can dramatically help the reading experience. So, yeah, I've been developing a technology called Typetura that really focuses on um, how text scales and provides tooling for folks to create highly legible reading experiences across different devices that they might be on. So yeah, there's a lot of technology already on font choice, and a lot of legibility and how that experience plays out takes place in, all right, how do you use those fonts well?
Yeah. Can I add to that, Aaron?
Please do.
Yeah. So the efficiency side of Typetura that Scott's developed is that you don't have to make multiple sort of formatting choices for your readers. So if you are, for example, the State Department, and you're putting a memo or whatever it is in a digital format, and that thing needs to ship across any tablet, any phone size, any desktop size, whether I'm in the conference room on the like really giant screens or like looking at it on my teeny tiny little phone, it needs to be legible, it needs to be readable. Right now, what designers have to do, what people producing these typographic materials have to do is they have to like design each little piece, kind of like approximating what it should look like on the giant screen, and then they literally do several versions. And though making those several versions is as linear as it sounds. Like you do the same work several times. And so what Typetura does is that it uses a particularly clever, and I'm going to brag on Scott here, a particularly clever interpretation of one of the core internet languages called CSS to make the type not behave like type, but instead to behave like an animation. And the kind of the technical bits are not important unless you're interested. And you can go to, is it typetura.com, Scott? Is that where people
Yes,
can learn about it?
typetura.com. Yeah.
And the GitHub is open and everything. So if you're interested in the technical bits, please go to typetura.com and to the GitHub and check it out and leave comments, and like Scott sees them all. But if you're not interested in the technical bits, but you are interested in money, what you need to take away from this is you don't want your people doing the same work multiple times, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the power of the technology. And the final thing I'll say is that it did this, the kind of underlying technology, because there's so many layers, as we know, to any project, just became like a browser spec, which means that all the browsers now support it. It's like super exciting. It had to come from this like really, I mean, in my mind, just this like super august body somewhere called the W3C that like makes the rules for browsers. Like
Yeah.
there's a body that makes the rules for
W3C,
browsers.
those are the
Yeah,
508 accessibility people.
I believe so.
They know they are.
Okay.
The Web
Okay.
They
Consortium.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's WCAG, which is the web,
Yeah, it's like
the
a
accessibility
Right.
group, and they decide all the accessibility. So W3C is the World Wide Web Consortium, and they have standards. They are the standards body that all the browsers follow, and they work on JavaScript standards, HTML standards. They have subcommittees on forms and inputs to try to make those more manageable for people. And yeah, the CSS working group has picked up some of Typetura's approaches and started
so
to codify those into web standards.
so let me ask you another question based upon the description of how work typically goes that you gave me, Anna. When there's a new device type, a new screen size that becomes popularized, the smartwatch.
Oh
A
yeah,
lot
the
of
Watch
documents get
2.
made before the smartwatch. So all of these fonts are not prepared for a new popular screen size that comes up under the traditional model
No, no, the fonts are fine.
or the
It's
font
the way that the fonts
proportions.
appear. Yeah.
Yes. So theoretically, not even theoretically, practically, what we're also doing is we're future proofing
Yeah,
because
that's
a
what it
new
is.
device comes and it's ready. Am I understanding this correctly?
That's right. So for layout, the idea is to make something that can respond to the environment that is put in and be
Awesome.
future proofed for that environment. So yes, um, and I would push back that the some fonts are not ready for new technologies. New
Okay.
technologies have always changed how typeface design works. And I think Calibri is an excellent example, because LCDs have very specific rendering constraints that
Right.
Calibri addressed within its design. Before that, there was photo typesetting. And if you notice like that rounded, warm look that fonts get from, the 70s, that
So
is,
friendly. I love that
it's
look.
so friendly, but that's because that roundedness is a slight focusing issue when they are printing the text onto a
Oh,
page.
that is cute. It's like how
So
everybody looks better in movies, like before there was like 4K. Like
it's
everyone looks better.
slight
I don't want
lens
to see
blur.
myself in high
Yeah.
def. Yeah.
Um, so like the technology and typeface design and the aesthetics of the day have always been driven or intertwined.
So, yeah, this brings us back to Times New Roman being a print font.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, there you go, everybody. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Once again, if I could summarize this in brief, it's a small change, but we do it so many times, it's going to add up. That's why fonts and typography matter. Thank you for
Yeah.
listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on Ishmael Interactive's CX Pod. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, head on over to ishmailinteractive.com and hit subscribe. When you do, you get the full podcast delivered to your inbox, articles providing context and meta analysis to the interview, behind the scenes commentary from our leadership team, offers and discounts on Ishmael Interactive products, services, programs, and systems. Thanks for listening, and see you soon.